Do you remember the 14th afternoon of Rocktember? The White Sox, they got dismembered. The Guardians are a contender.
All right, be honest. Be honest. When you saw that ball hit off the foul pole, it wasn't thoughts of Francisco Lindor doing it. It wasn't everything it meant for this team to win the final game of the season, despite already clinching the division minutes earlier, hours earlier, whatever it was. Felt like that game was lasting forever. It was, oh my God, they're going to play that flipping song that I sang again. You had to think about it, like at least once, right?
Tim Stebbins had a great tweet when it happened. He said, do you remember the 28th night of Rocktember? But I didn't know the date. I would have loved to come up with that. But I feel like this has been such a blur, such a whirlwind the last couple of weeks. Apparently it's still September. I've been saying they're on to October, and people are like, no, bro, game one is going to be in September.
Well, that's okay, because through all of the predictions I'm already seeing, and I've got a few of them we'll throw your way, the one thing people are failing to take into account, playoff Rocchio is here.
Yeah.
And what sort of difference does playoff Rocchio make to a projection that Fangraphs can't account for? I'm sorry, you've got playoff Rocchio. That mode has been activated. Good luck, Tigers.
So Austin Hedges eventually could be a coach, could be a front office liaison of some sort, could be an analyst, could be a lot of things. He better be some sort of Michael Buffer replacement one day, or Howard Finkel, Tony Chimmel, some of our favorites, right? This guy could be, he's just got that energy, that charisma. And of course he's got the leadership. So he's the guy who's presenting the belt. They're still doing the Tyler Beatty championship belts that cost $550 on the MLB store, I believe. And they award it to the player of the game after every win. So it was Jonathan Rodriguez on Saturday, and Hedges is doing this in the middle of just a mob scene or a nightclub scene in the clubhouse with the dimmed red lights and the stench of champagne and everything. So Jonathan Rodriguez got it. But on Sunday, after they win the division, after Rocchio does his Francisco Lindor impression, it seemed like, Hedges awarded it. He builds up and he says, the heavyweight champion of the world, playoff Rocchio. This isn't just a meme. This isn't just a thing on Guardians Twitter. This isn't just a thing on goofy podcasts. This is a thing. They know it. They refer to him as playoff Rocchio. They know there's a switch that gets flipped. And it's time.
Couldn't happen at a better time. We will get to the matchup ahead and look at pitching matchups. And my God, what is to unearth that hasn't already been unearthed between these two teams coming up? They've played, this is coming up third time in 3 weeks. There's not a lot of surprises here between these two squads, but we'll dive into it, all the particulars.
Like, you know when we always make fun of let's go position by position and see who has the advantage, right? And in those breakdowns, there's always like who could be the surprise X factor, or who's like the player. And it's like, nobody. There are no secrets with these teams anymore, okay? They know each other too well. They play too often in too short of a time span.
Right.
There's no secret. There's no X factor. There's nothing. It's just go play. They'll probably be close games.
Yeah.
And no surprises.
I love reading breakdowns of pitchers, their strengths against hitters' strengths, and at playoff time you really dive in because it gets very granular. But it doesn't matter here. I don't need to read any of that. I've been witnessing it now for the last 3 weeks between these two squads. They're very familiar with each other. By the way, welcome to the Selby's Godcast. I'm TJ, that's Zach. We will talk about the upcoming matchup between Detroit and Cleveland and the fact that Cleveland storms back to actually win this division. The last time we convened, we knew they were a playoff team. We didn't know if they would win the Central Division. They are Central Division champs, and they do it because the Tigers lost. But that wasn't enough for Cleveland. And before we turn the page on the playoffs, let's just look back on that finale. It was a weird game. Those last games of the season where nothing is really on the line, it has a different feel from a spring training game. but it doesn't feel like a regular season game either. And the fact that that Cleveland, they already knew they were the division champs, and they fall behind a Texas squad that Detroit should at least be thanking them for making this a tough series. They didn't quit. Maybe how much credit goes to Vogt and that coaching staff on Texas's side, that they had a team that's beat up and out of it. They were still playing like they're fighting for their playoff lives. So that's what you would want to see, right? From the other team that's hoping that Texas takes down Cleveland. But what does it say about Cleveland that just because they're in the postseason, just because they've won the division, and they don't really need to play for anything in extra innings after the god that always takes you down hit a 3-run home run against you in extra innings, and this should be over. Let's just get to the playoffs. They didn't make it that, and they stormed back to even win that game and give the send-off in the regular season to fans being happy and the team being happy and playoff Rokio activated.
Pretty fitting, right? They were 40-48. And I know the 3 wild cards in each league help keep teams in that position motivated. You might have been 15.5 games out in the division, but you were 5.5, 6 out of the wild card. So you could at least tell yourself, well, we're still in this race. But it would have been so easy, would it not, to just say, look, we had a little less than half the season left. Let's just play out the string here. Just or individually, let me just focus on me. How can I try to have the best season, the best numbers I can have the next couple of months? And that's all you worry about. And instead, they fought back. And then they got punched in the mouth again in August. And then they fought back. It would have been easy to just say, hey, we don't need this game. We'll go to Detroit. That's fine. We won there a couple weeks ago. We'll do it again. It would have been easy to say, oh, Detroit lost. We're division champs. All right. Just go stand at the plate and let 3 strikes go by and let's go home. Honestly, that's probably what they should have done. Because Jose Ramirez is laying there at second base and here come the trainers and you're like, what are you doing? But it is emblematic.
As I told you, sometimes the helmet counts you.
91. 91 for the regular season, by the way. I believe that's the second highest total of all time. The way they won that game was fitting. It was a microcosm of their season. It was also, they celebrated 2 straight days. They popped bottles again. It was craziness. You almost like wouldn't have known that you just did this. So here, I'll paint a scene. Hedges delivers the belt. They're all yelling. They're popping bottles. They're spraying champagne. And in the corner of the room, huddled together in front of an empty locker stall, are Stephen Kwan, Kyle Manzardo, and Daniel Schneemann. And what are those 3 doing?
Playing chess.
What are they doing? Are they like taking shots?
Backgammon.
No.
Monopoly.
Playing Super Smash Brothers.
Of course they are.
Those are the nerds in the corner of the room. And I said to Kwan, I said, what are you guys doing? He said, man, he's like, I'm getting too old for this. He's like 28. But on this team, that's probably in the upper half of ages, right?
The same guy that told Ken Rosenthal he had to get his sleep in so he can stay on his circadian rhythm.
And he's like, we just did this like 12 hours ago. Like it's true. But to a lot of the young guys who don't know any better, those guys who can go back-to-back nights partying and hitting the clubs, it's a blast. But how fitting is it that the game ended the way it did? Of course you're going to celebrate like never before. Imagine if they would have just lost to the Rangers and backed into the division. And yeah, they still would have popped bottles, but wouldn't it have felt like just like a little awkward, a little strange? No, they went and they took it. They were proud of the fact that they seized the division. They didn't need a tiebreaker over the Tigers. They didn't just lose and back into it. They went and they won. They finished ahead of the Tigers. They won their last game. They did it in dramatic fashion. They overcame a 3-run deficit in extra innings. And they did it I mean, dramatic fashion, and also just like, what an exclamation point. I mean, off the foul pole, you had Stephen Vogt whispering to Brian Rocchio saying, go have fun, get a barrel, keep it going. And part of the reason he did that is so that the Rangers would think he was telling him to bunt, so that they'd
Aha.
pull their infield in,
You know,
so that Rocchio could just stroke a single over their heads.
aha. It's finally the time we joke about all the time that somebody thinks that you know something, but I think you know that I know. It was him doing the double cross.
Yeah. And Rocchio said, bro, hit a single. I got this. He
Mammoth
crushed
shot.
that thing. Yeah.
He destroyed that thing. Yeah. The only question, he didn't even have to leave the box because it's fair or foul. Either I'm going to circle the bases or I'm staying right here and I'm going to enjoy this look down the right field line.
It was a pretty cool scene because he like backpedaled. He took about 4 steps backwards to just like, I mean, he might tell you that he was just trying to get a better glimpse of fair or foul, but I think that's more admiring your work, which I respect. But the back pedal, and then it's like, okay, time to commence the trot, bat flip. Like it was, we've talked about John Kenzie Noel in the playoffs last year. Like every nanosecond of that scene is perfect, right? Just crushes the home run, immediately drops the bat nonchalantly, and then just like power walks to first base. And this was up there.
John Kenzie Noel sort of got them off the mat in that game with his home run. It felt like Cleveland was dead, and that home run really re-energized the ballpark, got everyone back into it, and eventually they came back to win it. I know, meaningless game. It doesn't matter once Tarek Skubal takes the ball in game one, and it means something again. And all the ground that you made up, you're starting over from scratch now. So all of that is on the table, but for being able to appreciate a moment for what it is, and realizing all the hardship that the team fought through to be in this position. And as a fan, to witness some of the bad, brutal, awful baseball and whatever it was about this year that made this some of the worst baseball. It's not in necessarily record some of the worst baseball we've seen, certainly not for people that have been on this earth for even longer than the two of us. But something about it just made it feel like some of the worst baseball I've ever seen. And you survived that. You stayed here as part of the ride. You were still listening to this show. And even maybe you didn't want to be listening to the two of us complain about this squad. And when
I
the
think for a
team,
lot of people it was therapeutic though. Like
it
you
might have
needed
been.
that.
It might have been.
Which is why
Sure.
I don't look I know we've had this conversation and we've debated this privately, but like I look back at the conversations we were having in July and August, and I don't regret anything. And I think people with the team feel the same way. I think it makes it sweeter what's happening now. It makes it more improbable what has happened. But it doesn't change the fact. Again, like it could have the season could have gone the other direction. That's why instead of saying like anyone who predicted their demise at those low points in July should not feel guilty about doing that. Instead, you should give credit to the leadership in the team, the culture they established, right? Like we should look at that more than, well, you were stupid. You said that they weren't gonna, and it's like if you predicted that they were gonna make this historic comeback,
Can't all be Slade Ciccone, okay?
yeah, and that's how you have to believe. You have to think that when you're the player, right? That's the only way this is possible, is if you maintain that mindset. But to anyone taking victory laps, like, I said they'd make the play, and I mean, I didn't. You reminded me that I said that they were going to win a wild card, but like
No, they're not, you idiot. They're going to win the division.
I'm not taking a victory lap on that. It took a historic comeback, a historic run to do that. And there was no evidence that was going to happen, except it's just more proof of like Stephen Vogt's mettle as a manager, of the leadership on the team I know Austin Hedges gets a ton of the attention with that, and it's well deserved. A guy who needs more attention with that, and I tried to showcase that with the feature I wrote a couple of weeks ago on his personality behind the scenes and how it has mattered is Jose Ramirez. What he has meant to the young players in the worst times and the best times is immense. And so you just think about the leadership that they've exhibited over the season, and then finally you saw signs of development happening, right? And like especially on the pitching side. TJ, I had a conversation with Joey Cantillo during the middle of the fracas yesterday. And it was interesting. We've not ever had a one-on-one talk like this. And I almost felt like he was looking for someone, a familiar face that he could kind of just like revel in the moment with. And he came up to me and he's just talking about how sweet this is, how grateful he was that for a guy who's been in the in the big leagues for 2 years, you've gotten to pop bottles quite a few times, right? And Jacob Junis on the other side of the clubhouse, who waited 9 years to do this, will tell you, don't take it for granted. But Cantillo was just talking about like how what he's been through this year, and like he's like, Zach, like you've seen it up close, and like I think you have like a good perspective of what it's required, but like I don't think the outside public really understands the ups and downs of a season like this. And you can with the wins and losses, but you think about what someone like him has been through this season where he starts in the bullpen, he gets sent down to stretch out, he stretches out as a starter, comes back up, goes back down, they tell him attack the strike zone, he comes back up, and as that's all happening, the individual side of it, the team is going through this roller coaster, right? And so you want to help the team so badly because you want to turn the season around. You also know that you need to improve some things. And what do baseball players always say? You try to, if you don't try to do too much, you'll be successful. But it's hard not to do too much when there are things you want to change about your game and the team's game. And long-winded way of saying, if you look at his stats in September, he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball. And I don't know who would have guessed that about Joey Cantillo last year or coming into this season or in the middle of this season. And that's what it's required. Like it has been unforeseen things like that that have gotten this team to this point. It's what's made it so fun. It's why we talk about the 2017 win streak and we say it was awesome, but that team was awesome. Like this team stunk, and now this has been awesome. So it makes it more shocking. It makes it maybe more enjoyable. So I don't take back anything we yelled about. They could, no matter what happens from here, they should build on it this winter, and we can have that conversation. You should avoid making the same mistakes or employing the same passiveness that you did last winter, right? So that you don't fall to 40 and 48. But those are conversations. We can have that talk another day. There are people who are going to try to use this historic run as like proof of something, and it's not proof of anything other than we should just shut up and enjoy the ride.
That it's a really long season, and if you have the right people in place, you still give yourself a shot. And even through some of the worst times, I didn't think they didn't have the right people in place. We've said that Antonetti needs to feel pressure to do a better job, as I think anybody should. I still believed, even when they were going through their 10-game losing streak, that Stephen Vogt was the right man for the job. And I think that was reinforced, obviously, through this stretch, all the way through the last game of the regular season. You take on the leadership qualities of your manager often. At least that's the goal. And if they don't, then maybe you're looking for a new manager, because it's easier to change the manager than it is all the players, oftentimes. But I felt like we saw that when in the dugout, they show Stephen Vogt just after the fans have cheered their brains out as they got the notifications on their phone, and they flash it up eventually on the scoreboard that Detroit has lost and Cleveland is the division champs. And everyone is, even despite the fact that Cleveland's losing this game still, is taking that moment to applaud and cheer together. Players, fans, coaches, everyone in the moment experiencing that. And they go to Stephen Vogt in the dugout. I don't know if you saw, and we know he's an emotional guy. We've seen him tear up at press conferences when talking about how proud he is of players. And they show him, and and you can tell he's just in his brain. He's staring out onto the field, and it is taking every ounce of energy I think this man has to not just emotionally lose it. You can see the tears welling up in the corners of his eyes, and it comes from knowing everything that his team fought through to be in this position, everything they had to overcome. the young players that have had to take on much bigger roles than anyone would have anticipated, and he's so proud. He's so proud of the way that they've played to be in this position and to call this his group. And I thought just in that 1 2-second shot of Vogt in the dugout, it showed you why he's the right guy for the job. We talked endlessly for years for all the things that we would yell and scream about with Tito and say, what are we doing here? What sort of move is this or that? And he got a lot right. More right than he got wrong, but there were still those things that he would do that would drive us crazy. And you would always come back to the central point that you stressed, I think, a week and a half ago. Players would run through a brick freaking wall for that guy.
Yeah.
And to me, when you've got 162 games on the schedule and then just surviving October, more important than the X's and O's is I need a guy in that chair that gets that sort of reaction out of his players. And there's no question, not a single soul in that dugout questions whether Stephen Vogt cares about them, wants the best for them, and has all the best intentions in mind for everything that he does.
There are a number of factors that made him the right choice to be hired. And in talking to his former teammates, his former mentors, his family, I remember trying to get a sense of who is this guy? Why is he the fit? And what can you expect? And I remember the more I learned, the more, he was building a resume to be able to do this job from the time he was basically in high school. He didn't go to a big college. He went to Azusa Pacific. Anyone ever heard of that? He told me that I think they got rid of their football program during the pandemic, and now they're bringing it back, but they're going to be like Division III. That tells you what school that there's not like he's had to scratch and claw to get to where he is, and he was 25 years old, a backup catcher in A-ball. He's not thinking, I'm going to play a decade in the majors and I'm going to be a 2-time All-Star. No, he's thinking, who can I stand near where just standing near them I will absorb the intellect to learn how to be a coach. And it just so happened that he could always hit. And he worked his way up to the majors. And then he experienced every high and low you can. 2-time All-Star, DFA'd, traded, crappy teams, playoff hero, won a World Series, injuries that made him miss a season. And what did he do during that season off in Milwaukee? He absorbed all the info he could from Craig Counsell and Pat Murphy. Who was the manager of the year in the National League last year? Pat Murphy. Who's probably going to be the manager of the year in the National League this year? Pat Murphy. Who was the American League manager of the year last year? Stephen Vogt. Who might be the American League manager of the year this year? Stephen Vogt. Everything he's done for 25 years. Yeah, he wanted to be a superstar Major League Baseball player. But he knew he could have a coaching career. He had the demeanor, the personality, and the care, the passion for the game and for people that it requires to be a successful coach. He knew that. So he was doing both all along. And it helped that he spent 1 year as a coach. He was a bullpen coach in Seattle. So he is close enough in age or experience within the game to these guys to know how to approach them, right? I give Terry Francona a ton of credit because he's a grandpa who's able to connect with his grandkids. That's hard to do. That's why I have so much respect for Carl Willis, who has adapted so much in a pitching realm that has changed drastically since when he first was coaching in Burlington in the late 90s and CC Sabathia. He had to teach how to throw anything other than a fastball, and it's not like he had Rapsodo and TrackMan to help do that, right? Stephen Vogt is 40. He's a man. He's 40. He just played a few years ago. So he can connect. He knows how to get through to these guys. He knows what to say at the right time, when to say it, how to deliver that message. We talked about it. I wrote it recently. when they had to DFA Colby Allard after he threw 3 scoreless innings and lowered his ERA to 2.55. And he knew they had to DFA him because they needed another pitcher so that they could replace Luis Ortiz. And he wasn't able to tell them at the time, like, hey, we got to do this because this guy might have really screwed up. He just had to say, we got to DFA you. I'm sorry. You know how tough that is? How tough that conversation is? And he cried that night, and that was as low as it gets for him. But he has a way to get through and to deliver those kinds of messages that Colby Allard was right back a week later. Colby Allard is pitching in key games and succeeding, right? And this is a guy who's bounced around the majors, who hasn't fulfilled the promise of being a first-round pick, being a top 100 prospect. It's just last season, he had to learn how to apply everything he thought he had, right? Like you feel like you have all the ingredients to be really good at this, but you don't know until you go through it. So he had to go through 162 games, and they had adversity. People gloss over it and say, well, they were in first place all year. How hard was it? And it's like, they had a great first road trip, and then Shane Bieber, your ace, is just done. Like that's a lot to overcome after 1 week. And so he did such a good job of pushing the right buttons last season and getting that team to the ALCS, but there was a steep learning curve, right? But it was successful. And now you get to apply all that for a team that went through all this adversity. And because it worked, because you see it working, and like that keeps you motivated through September, you get to this point in the season and you're right, man. Like, find me a player in that clubhouse who's not going to sign up to run through a brick wall for the guy. It's not just him. Like, their coaching staff is cohesive and I think really good. And they've kind of figured it out, right? Like, this is a new group. Carl Willis had not worked with Kai Correa and Craig Albernaz, and they've got new hitting people, and like it's a big adjustment. I think bigger than you'd realize on the outside, and I think that's been an advantage. It certainly has helped get them through what was a couple months of hell there in the summer.
With all that said, Stephen Vogt did say something that made me a little nervous leading into the final homestand. He begged Cleveland fans to come out and bring the energy and support, because I can't remember exactly what he said, but we're going to come home and bring that energy too, and we need you there with us. And I got nervous because, one, it's raising expectations in a way that we have seen other players or coaches in the past say, we're going to bring it, and then they come out really flat, and it almost becomes your worst enemy because you've now built this up, and this is just really big.
Don't come calling me, Mike Holmgren, for playoff tickets.
The second thing is, we've also seen it where players, I think of Chris Perez being upset in the past, where they've begged fans, come on, embrace us, we're right there. And there were stretches where the team was in it and they're playing meaningful games. And I'll put that in quotations, meaningful games, but people didn't buy in. They didn't really appreciate or believe in what was being laid out there. And so you didn't see the gigantic crowds. I'm going to pander a little bit to our audience and to Cleveland fans. The way they brought energy in that final homestand was nothing short of spectacular. Everyone that went to a game and brought playoff level energy to that last week to support a team that, even as recent as 3 weeks ago, this stretch did not appear possible. And they were ready to embrace. They were ready to be there and love and lift their club to victory. That was an impressive showing. And it takes a lot to throw that together at the end of the year when like 13,000 tickets sold for these games prior to the games actually, the week arriving, that in advance.
You got
and
football,
they showed up,
school,
right? This is the time of year where
pumpkin patches.
I can write it off a little bit. I can say, there's built-in excuses why you wouldn't want to go down to the ballpark and support this team. And
I'll just wait for the playoffs if they get there.
it didn't freaking matter. They
average
brought
almost
it.
32,000 a night.
They brought it. They
Yeah.
brought it, and don't let anybody tell you that that doesn't mean at least something to every single player and coach and front office
Yeah.
member and hopefully the owner.
How dare you? They noticed. It's Stephen Kwan said like you can tell the difference when there's like a borderline pitch, and he's the perfect one to talk about it too, because there was one night where he took a called strike three that was like at his neck, and you can just tell when there's like a borderline pitch in the second inning, and it's Tuesday, and like the fans are going nuts, and it's like, oh, like they're paying attention. They're not going to get a hot dog right now. They're not looking at their phones. They're into this because that's how it is in the playoffs. Every pitch feels like the most important moment of your life, and it's felt like that all week. It's pretty cool. This this is not pandering. This is real. I felt like it's this way for a long time. When Progressive Field is packed,
Yeah. It's not just the two of us
tough
saying
to
that
beat.
too. I've
Yeah.
seen many people nationally saying that as they've seen the highlights, the Tarek Skubal disaster for him and masterpiece for Cleveland was as much as you can feel that energy building until it finally erupts. And I've seen so many highlights where people are noting that. They're just saying this ballpark is incredible when Cleveland has something to play for and everyone's into it. It does make a difference.
Even at 1:08 p.m. on a Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday.
I'm not going to put it past for what we saw this past week.
No, I'm
I
sure
think
it'll be
I think
electric.
they'll be ready.
It's
Will Tarek
it's
Skubal
great.
be ready? Will Gavin Williams be ready?
Can they just get one night game?
Well, I'm
That's
just
all right.
just lucky it's not being played on Mars. Can I tell you one last thing that made me laugh before we push forward to the postseason?
Sure.
Final game of the or final games of the season. Baseball sort of got what they wanted. It didn't have as much drama on the line as I think they would like. They're trying to recreate the end of 2011 every single year, where Tito's getting fired in Boston, and was it Evan Longoria hit the ball down the line? What everyone kind of views as
Yeah, and like Dan Johnson or something.
the best last day of the regular season in baseball history, and they've tried to recreate that with having all the games start at the same time. There was a lot on the line, and so it was worth watching. But mostly in the AL was just seeding and who's going where. But I'm paying attention to that Toronto game, and I'm watching a highlights. I've got the Guardians on one screen, and I've got Big Inning on the other, so it's all these screens. And a ground ball goes to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at first base for Toronto. And the pitcher's not going to make it to the bag in time. I think it was Gossman. Not going to make it to the bag in time. So he realizes I gotta make it to the bag before the guy running down the first baseline. So he takes off. You imagine Vladdy Guerrero Jr. taking off for first base. That looks like a runaway freight train, right? And he gets to the bag, steps on the bag just before the runner. So he beats him. But in your brain as a player, when you're sprinting to the bag, typically it's not you as a fielder, it's you as the runner trying to beat the fielder to the bag. So in his brain, somewhere there was a disconnect, there was a misfire. And so he steps on the bag and he goes to turn around to the umpire. What does a runner do when they go down the first baseline and they think they've beat it? Stretch their arms out in a safe position, right?
Oh, I thought you were talking about Fausto Carmona.
Not that. Safe position, right? Got to influence the umpire.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. did?
The opposite?
He didn't turn around and do the out call. It's so ingrained in his brain that I beat the guy to the bag. He puts his arms out like safe. But then he realized, oh no, wait, I'm the fielder. I actually want him to be out.
Do you remember when Miggy Cabrera used to point to the first base ump, like on a check swing? He'd point to the ump like, what? You stand to gain nothing. They haven't called you out yet.
Don't you think about it. You know I was a check swing. Yeah, I laughed. It's just so ingrained. It's second nature. You beat the guy to the bag, you're going to instantly signal safe. He signaled safe, and the umpire said out, and he was out. But it brought some brief levity to a day that otherwise for a lot of people was very pressure packed. And through all the chaos, we arrived at our playoff matchups. We're looking at that Detroit-Cleveland series, been circling that, and there were some questions there in that final day whether it was going to be Boston, but it is Cleveland-Detroit, Tarek Skubal against Gavin Williams. And we know Gavin has been absolutely incredible, despite that one commenter that is very upset about it. Can you guess who has the higher earned run average between Gavin Williams and Tarek Skubal in the second half? Well, let me frame it better. Who has the lower earned run average between the two?
This would be a pretty boring exercise if it's Scooble. So I'll go Gavin Williams.
You are incorrect.
Oh.
So your other option is to say that it's Tarek Skubal. You're also incorrect.
It's a tie?
They have the exact same earned run average. I know there might be fractions of
I'm
runs
not sure
there.
how to respond to that. Like watching the Packers Cowboys last night.
Yeah, I pulled it up. Second half earned run average for Gavin Williams, 2.18. Tarek Skubal, 2.18. Don't look at expected earned run average. Don't look at the FIP. Don't look at Fangraphs wins above replacement. In terms of run prevention, which is the name of the game, they've been equals. And now they match up what looks to be coming up in game one.
So we can expect another wild card game reminiscent of the 0-0 Tampa 15-inning Oscar Gonzalez
Oh, I don't know if the heart can take that.
game.
And that would be game one of the series.
Mm-hmm. Who should pitch game 3?
Why do you even want to think about that? Just win the day ahead. You don't have to worry about
That's a good point.
Game 3.
Yeah, they should change their strategy. Just try to win it too.
That's something to keep in mind. It's a fair question. After everything we witnessed in the final week, I know we talked about handedness being a deciding factor, perhaps, depending on what team you're going to play. And Detroit does have some guys that can attack lefties. I'm very, very enticed. It's very enticing to say Joey Cantillo's that guy.
Do you know that he had a 155 ERA in September? Do you know that he had a very good case to win Pitcher of the Month in September? I don't know if he's going to win. I was debating him, Max Fried, and Kevin Gausman before Gausman pitched on Sunday. Cantillo's numbers are right there. So, if you want to go with the guy who's just been rolling, who's been so reliable, who was told, go down to AAA and stop walking people, and came back up, and he had 6 walks in 5 September starts spanning 29-plus innings. Pretty good. He listened. But the Tigers have been better against lefties, and that has to factor in. The main point is there's got to be some way to just put Ciccone and Cantillo as a tandem and make it really effective to either get the lefties into the game and then out of the game, or get Kerry Carpenter into the game and then out of the game. So we'll see. A game 3, it's going to be all hands on deck anyway. But, do you want to go with one of those guys maybe just one time through the order? Is Cantillo more comfortable coming out of the pen because he's done it this year? Ciccone's done it in the past. He's done it in the past in the playoffs.
Depending on how aggressive you want to be too, it helps determine how many bench spots you're gonna take. Does a guy like Petey Halpin bring some value to I as a pinch runner, defensive, speedy guy?
I think you're just gonna
plug sort of player.
I think you're just gonna lop off 2 pitchers from the roster.
I agree, but I mean, I was looking at it today. You would drop
Logan Allen and Zach Kent.
Zach Kent and Logan Allen, I would assume, for this. But then isn't this factoring in the 28 right now? What the roster I'm looking at? Maybe I need to count
28
these.
minus Allen is 27, minus Kent is 26.
Right. But I just want to make sure. Okay, yeah. I think there's some value there for a guy like Halpin.
Plus Chase DeLauder minus what?
Good grief. The one thing I wonder with Cantillo, I think they even did this against him. Was it Detroit that did this against him? All these games are rolling together. They're better against lefties, but Cantillo is a guy that uses the changeup against righties. So does that neutralize what they're going to try to bring against the lefty, because he doesn't mind as many righties in there
Yeah.
because it makes the changeup. It's tougher, or guys are less. It's less desirable for those lefties to want to throw the changeups to left on left, because there's that fear that it could
Yeah.
fade back into the nitro zone of left-handed hitters.
Cantillo's been better against righties this year. Now, this is matchup dependent too, right? Um, I think I would probably just like he and Saccone both pitch well against Detroit in the last couple weeks. I would, to me, it's not even about the pitcher. It's about the order of operations here, and you can't just assume everything's going to go according to plan. But I'm just thinking, would you rather have which lineup do you want them to have first? Because they're going to go Jahmai Jones and Wenzel Perez will hit higher, and probably forgetting another right-handed bat that they have. But who do you want in there early?
Banez, maybe?
Yeah, Andy Banez, who then probably won't be in there late because then you'll have, Saccone going through and they'll use Carpenter and they'll use whoever else. So you just have to think that way. Or would you rather have the righty on the mound first, then you have Carpenter and all those guys in the lineup, then you go Cantillo, get those guys out of the lineup, but then those guys, the guys that come in have to stay in to face Gaddis and Cade Smith, etc. It's like that's probably more of what the judgment has to be here because both guys are pitching so well. Like Saccone before the other night against Texas had been utterly dominant for 3 starts. So I don't think there's a bad choice here. But that's just the way I would think through it. Also, we're getting ahead of ourselves. They might decide we're going Saccone, so Cantillo's going to be in the bullpen, and he's going to be in the bullpen starting game 1. Like, who knows?
I doubt they're going to announce more than 5 minutes in front of their face, though. I think they're going to hold it back as long as possible. I mean, Detroit was doing that in the postseason last year when they had no other choice but to do the bullpen chaos route. They're a little bit, it's a different makeup now for Detroit. They haven't announced their game 2 starter yet, right? So we're only looking at, and Cleveland hasn't officially even announced Gavin Williams. I don't believe, at least according to the pitching probables.
No, Vogt said he didn't want to say it yesterday. It's
yeah, that part we know. And then it would be Bybee in game 2. So what do you think the projections are going to say about the likelihood of this series? I got Zips pulled up. What do you think Zips sees as the most likely outcome for this series?
Tigers in 3.
57.9% of the time they have the Tigers winning the series. 42.1% for Cleveland.
Well, that's good because a few weeks ago it was 99.8% Tigers and 0.2.
That was going to be my point.
Yeah.
That was going to be my point. Going Han Solo here. Never tell me the odds. Tigers winning in 2 games is the most likely outcome. 31.9%. Second most likely outcome is Tigers win in 3, 26%. And then Guardians in 3, 24.3%. Guardians win in 2, 17.8%.
These are always a coin flip.
This is dependent on. I mean, he had to fill in the pitchers here that we don't even know. Like this is Parker Messick slated to pitch game 3, who could pitch game 3, but I think it's going to be either Cantillo or Saccone.
The wild card series you are most confident in, Dodgers over Reds.
Yeah,
fair assumption.
Sure.
Even that is like, wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world if the Reds won. Hunter Green is a good pitcher going in game 1. You just have to get enough offense for 2 days.
66% of the time, Dodgers win that series, according to Zips.
Yeah, but like that's what I mean. There's no such thing as like a guarantee or a lock for these.
Wow, I'm surprised. 64.5% for Yankees over Red Sox. I think that's closer. I do think Yankees have the edge. Red Sox have not had the same offense since Anthony's been out, and a little bit different of an offense. But that's a bigger gap than I thought. And then this one's no shock. 51.2% Padres over Cubs. really the only outcome that would surprise me is Reds over Dodgers. Everything
Yeah,
else
but
feels
even
like
that is again like it's possible. It's not. It's best of three. Remember what you thought about the Guardians going into Houston in July, coming off a 10-game losing streak?
that's why I think
Anything can happen in a three-game
not
series.
only because it's a 3-game series, but if for Cleveland in particular, all the normal stuff that we would talk about for a postseason matchup goes out the window. Not only because it's only that 3-game series, but because they've played so much. All of the advantages that we were alluding to
Mm-hmm.
earlier, that teams try to hide certain guys, and this guy's unfamiliar to a team, or they're a different pitcher than the last time they faced them 2 months ago. They have a different arsenal. There are no surprises. These two
No,
teams are so familiar with one another. It would not be shocking if Skubal was great, but it also wouldn't surprise me if somehow they figured out something against Skubal and they knock him
work his
off
pitch
again.
count, keep it close for 6 innings, and then take off. Yeah, our Tigers writer and I had to combine on like three. I don't want to say matchups, but like focal points for the series, and it was like the easiest thing to ever do because there are no surprise. I know that team as well as I know the Guardians at this point, and it's like it's very easy to put together. We don't need to do a position by position breakdown, people. No, these teams are just they know each other. There are no surprises. There's
And
no
that
scouting report
doesn't
that you're
matter
going to
anyway.
read. You think that Gavin Williams is going to read a scouting report tomorrow and be like, "Whoa, interesting. Okay, I'll keep this in mind." No, these two teams know each other intimately. AJ Hinch and Stephen Vogt know exactly what the other person is going to do, and so it's just who executes better.
Well, even exploiting other teams' weaknesses, pitchers still have to pitch to their strengths. They can't change their stripes. They can't, just because a team struggles against changeups. I haven't thrown a single changeup this year. Guess I'm going to learn and throw it against this team. That doesn't work. It doesn't happen. You factor some of that in. If you know a team struggles against a certain breaking pitch, or in certain counts they're terrible at this or that. Sure, you integrate that into what you're trying to accomplish. But at the end of the day, I was laughing as I think it was Smoltz was breaking down Cantillo, and he was like, well, if you look at it, it really comes down to how he commands that fastball and whether or not he can throw the changeup down in the zone. And it's like, well, yeah. Thanks. Congratulations. Everyone knows that. That's what you're executing.
This is the free version of this podcast. You can't say that out loud, man. People with the Tigers might be listening.
Hold on. Let me write this down. Locate the fastball. Keep the changeup down. Wonder if Carl Willis even thought about that. Maybe that's what they told Cantillo when he went down to the minor leagues. There are no surprises, and nothing will surprise me in the playoffs.
I'm excited it's here. Because even though you think you know what's going to happen, you never truly do. 2016. Do you think that team was getting to Game 7 of the World Series?
No. I think I tell this story every October. You and I were sitting next to each other in Toronto. And I think it was right when they went up 3-0. I turned to you and I said, is this team going to effing win going to win it all? It just didn't feel real. It didn't feel like that was possible. But the more and more they played, the more and more it felt like that was the likely outcome.
No, it didn't feel possible until I woke up the morning of Game 5 of the World Series in Chicago with pounding chest pains.
Jeez.
Like, oh my God, are they going to do this? Am I ready for this? I don't think so. Yeah, look, do I think this team's going to win the World Series? No. Does that matter? No. Because who knows? And you can't think that long term. How has the team gotten here? Has it been by saying, okay, we're down 15 and a half games, so if we just knock off 4 games this week,
That's my favorite bit.
They've taken it one boring day at a time.
Let me ask you one final thing as we wrap things up. I think you're right. The criticisms we had about this team, 90% of them still land. And that's what makes this all so very exciting, is because they've overcome some of the things that they've even put in their own way to be in this position. And in a lot of ways, they didn't fully take off until they committed to the youth movement and cleared out some of the clutter. And they followed that formula for many years in the second half, seemingly. But that doesn't remove us entirely. There are still things that we probably will look back on and think foolishly about. Just want to erase it from existence. Give me one legit thing you are wrong about and you wish you could take back.
Can you go first?
Yes, I got one. We said many times that the way this team wants to play, the formula they've used in the years past was amazing rotation, just enough offense, good bullpen. And I said, that's great that's the plan, but this rotation, I don't have the faith that they are to the level that you can rely on them that heavily. They proved me wrong. And I should never doubt how they put together a rotation, a bullpen, a pitching staff, because they, even when you have a higher level of expectation because they do it so frequently, even if recently it's dropped off a little bit, and there's been questions of whether or not the factory is as efficient as it once was. I didn't think this team had the sort of pitching to be able to play the way that they wanted to, and in September, this pitching staff was as good as it got. So I wish I could at least reform the way I said that and not believing in the rotation to be this good.
I don't know. I think I was right about everything. No, I was about to be very wrong about the Jimenez for Ortiz trade, but you know, if you don't care about the money, no, I think I don't know. I guess I would say I just underestimated the pitching, kind of like you. The reason why I feel so steadfast about all the yelling about the lineup is because the lineup is still bad, right? And you didn't quite see the development. Like it's playoff Rocchio is fun. I like the bit. He's got to do it in the regular season at some point too, right? You can't just rely on a fluky short sample.
Save it all up. If I know you're going to get to October, save it all up. Use all your power ups at once.
I'll say this: the thing that has really stood out to me, an underrated facet that has helped the pitching staff rattle off what it's done lately, is the defense. And you think about missing Andres Jimenez and that glove. Has anybody been thinking about his glove over the last month or two? Arias and Rocchio up the middle are dynamite. Stephen Kwan could win a platinum glove this year. And I just think that's been a huge lift, right? Like it's been noticeable. Jose Ramirez has been so good defensively after he weathered that rough first few weeks. And I think that's been huge we said it all along, like they didn't have an identity. That's what I'll say I was wrong about. I said Guard's ball was dead. And honestly, it would be okay if it was. Like they need more power. They need more extra bases. You can't just rely forever on 3 bunts and a bloop. But they needed to find an identity. And it just turns out that the identity they eventually settled on is the identity that they've had in the past. But to get there, they needed better defense. They needed to clean up the base running. All that stuff helped the pitching staff, and it took the burden off this lineup that isn't up to snuff. And now you just need a timely hit or two. Now you just need the 3-run homer off the foul pole. And they've gotten it. And so we'll see. Guards ball got them to the Game 5 of the Division Series in 22. Guards ball got them to Game 5 of the ALCS in 24. Where will Guards ball take them in 2025? It's already taken them further than we thought.
And the most important thing, as we stressed at the time, that's not an identity that you can say you want to have or we once had. And we're still that, but we're not playing that way. You have to prove that that's the way you are. You have to do it through your play. And earlier this year, they were not doing that. And it started to fall on deaf ears to at least us, but not internally in that clubhouse, because they finally achieved the way that they wanted to play, and Stephen Vogt, magic touch.
So we close the door on Rocktember, and we embrace Rocktober? Rocktober? Doesn't roll off the tongue.
Now get a new song.